The question that I keep asking myself is how do I explain her business, her life, her design? Even before I launched it, I just kind of kept getting stuck on this question. Because on the surface, it sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? And a lot of people that know me, they just assumed that it was a business podcast. But every time I tried to explain it, it just kind of felt like an incomplete answer. Because this isn't actually a podcast about business. It's not a lifestyle podcast. And it's not really a podcast about design, at least not in the traditional sense. The truth is that this podcast is about what happens when all three of those collide, when all three of those play together in a way that just makes sense. I've spent the last 11 years building businesses, and in those years, I've become a wife, I've become a mother, I've experienced friendships change, I've watched priorities change, and I changed my own. I've had years where I felt wildly successful and I was so proud. And then I've had years where I wondered what the hell I was doing. And truthfully, I still have those years sometimes. And that's just part of the journey, isn't it? But the one thing that I realized is that most women don't actually have a business problem. And most women don't actually have a life problem. Most women have a clarity problem. And when you're not clear on your life, you can't be clear on your business either. As women, especially as millennial women, we were raised in this boss babe era. We were raised in this Pinterest era. We've all been told to be ambitious. And I want to be clear that I don't think ambition is the problem. I love ambition. I am very, very ambitious. And I hope that my girls are ambitious when they get older. Where I think we get into trouble with the word ambition is that we have been served different definitions or different messages around ambition, actually. On one hand, like I mentioned, we have been told to be ambitious and to get after it and to grow the business and to be independent and to make money and to have our own finances. But then on the other hand, we are also being told to not work so much, to be with our kids more, to not be selfish, to relax more, to rest more. And my favorite one, and if you don't sense the sarcasm in that, is don't you have enough? Why do you need more? This mixed messaging and ambition is making us very confused about what success is. Because even as small children, the definition of success is listen to your parents, go to school, get good grades, go to university, get the job, get married, have kids, buy the house. Then, if you want to build a business, you build a business, you get the revenue, you get the followers, you get the recognition, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point, you have to say, wait a minute, is this even what I want? And none of those things are bad, by the way. But I think where we get ourselves into a lot of internal struggle is when we don't know what we want. And I think it's a really scary place to be as a woman when you don't know yourself well enough to go, am I even pursuing the right thing? We have to know ourselves in order to be able to continue on our journey in a happy way. And this is where the first pillar comes in that I want to talk about, and it's her life. The podcast is called The Life She Built. It's not called The Business She Built. And even though the tagline is her business, her life, her design, life is at the core of all of this. So this pillar is not about motherhood, and it's not about marriage, it's not about health, it's not about relationships or friendships or joy or fashion or skincare. It's about all of it. It's the person underneath everything. It is the soul, it is the body, it is the mind. Before we're entrepreneurs, we're human beings. But somewhere along the way, entrepreneurship teaches us to just sort of ignore that. And business just becomes what we do. It just kind of becomes our identity. But the truth is that most of us have a business because we are trying to fuel something inside of us. And most of us know why we start something, but we lose track of why we did. And then we try to prove something to others and we try to chase goals that aren't even ours to chase. And I have been there myself, and I'll tell you my story in the next episode. But there was a time in my life where I thought that the ultimate success as a wedding planner was to have more weddings, to just be as full as I could possibly be. Every weekend, I was doing something. And now I've realized that that's not my version of success. And it's not because I became less ambitious, it's because I became aware of what matters to me. And that's what we need to talk about. I want you all to know who you are. So I want you to pause this right now. And I want you to do an exercise for me, for yourself, actually. Grab a notebook or put it in your phone, wherever you do this. But I want you to journal around this a little bit and ask yourself these questions. You don't have to answer these questions, word for word, but let them be your guide when you're talking about this. If I was free from everyone else's judgment, from everyone else's expectations, from all the things I think I should do because others are doing it, what would I do? What would my life look like? How would I spend my days? What would make me happy? What would bring me peace and freedom? Because that's the ultimate luxury in this life. Because once you know that, that's when we can talk about business. I ask so many people those questions when I go for dinner with my girlfriends or when we just talk to other women, and a lot of them have no idea what would make them happy. But once you know that, that's when we can talk about business. Because I don't want you to think that the message here is don't have a business. Oh my goodness, no. I love business. Business comes with so much growth as a person. It becomes this engine of self awareness and self growth if you allow it to be. You can make huge impact on people's lives owning a business. And I love business. But business is a tool. What you do as a business owner is not your identity. That's not who you are. Your business is a tool to achieve your version of success. Do you see how that works? It does not need to become this altar of sacrifice. And it definitely does not determine your worth as a human being. Businesses are not meant to just be built in isolation. And I know so many people who have thriving businesses, but terrible lives. And it's because they lost their version of success somewhere as human beings. They allowed the business to be who they are. But what's really cool about knowing who you are and knowing what your version of success and your why is that you can then build that business. You can have 5 different women in a room all building businesses, but their version of success is something different. To one, building that $1 million, $1 billion business is her version of success. And there's a reason for it, and she knows it. She feels it. To another, she wants flexibility. Maybe if $500 a month is enough for her to save for her family's vacations or to feel that financial independence. To someone else, it might be because business opens them up for travel and a world of seeing things. Everybody has a different reason, and they're all equally as valid and important and right, as long as they are their version, as long as you know your version and what that is, and you're not pursuing $1 million business if your ultimate desire is complete freedom. So this is the beauty of it. You get to build what you want, and you do that through our next pillar, which is design. So when you hear the word design, you think what something looks like. And of course, that's part of it. I love that piece of it too. But in this case, I think design is how something works. You ultimately get to design the life that you want to live. And the best part of this is that design is a choice. That's the most powerful piece here. You can design your business model. Nobody else should tell you you have to do it this way in order to have your success. People can give their opinions, people can give you how they've done it, coaches can help you get there, but ultimately you have to know yourself to know, will that business model support my version of success? You can design your environment, you can design your days, what your days look like. You get to design your relationships and what you accept and what you don't accept. You get to design your version of enough. But that version and that definition of enough comes from knowing yourself. Some of the women that I am most inspired by are not the women with the biggest bank account or the women that are most successful on paper. It is the women who are intentional. It is the women who know themselves so deeply that everything they do in life is to honor who they are. And that is one of the most powerful things that you can take away. So, at its core, this podcast is about getting women to ask themselves better questions. It's not about how do I make more money, although if that is an after effect of it, amazing. It's not about how do I get more followers. It's not about how do I grow faster, but it's who am I? What matters to me? What does success actually mean in this season of my life? And how do I intentionally design both my business and my life around that answer? But it has to start with knowing who you are and what your version of success is. And if you don't know that answer right now, that is okay. It can take years to get there. And it's not as simple as I'm making it sound. There are so many factors that go into play of getting to design these things. What I'm not saying is you can just go and you can just blow up your life and design it perfectly how you want it. Wouldn't that be nice? But that's not how it works. What I'm saying is that there's little steps you can take little by little. And I promise you that those little steps add up and you will find a way to have a business that you love that's not consuming your life. So, yes, we will talk about simple things like CRMs, but we are going to do it through a lens of how can this support the version of the life that I want to live. We are going to talk about finances, but it's going to be how can these support the version of the life that I want to live? We're not going to talk about how do I get $1 million in the bank. Again, if you do, amazing. But if you're doing that at the cost of yourself and your peace and your version of happy, then that's not the goal. So at the end of it all, if you know who you are, you will build a business that can support that. And that is the coolest thing that we can do. And like I mentioned, every woman is different. So that's why you will hear me end every episode with take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Leave what doesn't for someone else. What I'm not going to promise you is that every episode is going to be groundbreaking for you because we are all different when we have different goals. But what I can promise you is that there will be something in this podcast that's going to trigger something in you to continue to work towards the life that you want to have. We'll talk about all of it. We'll talk about hormones and health and parenting and finances and CRMs and hiring and firing and processes and systems and calendars. We'll talk about all of it, but it's all going to be through the lens of, does this support the life that you want? And is the life that you want or that you think you want actually honoring who you are? So I'll leave you with this. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Thank you for being here with me. Until next time.